Hi everyone. So this is the fourth video in our series of examining if socioeconomically advantaged neighborhoods have more 311 requests or if they have their requests filled faster. As a reminder, links to both where I got my numbers from and as well as the corresponding tableau file are provided in the description below. So see the description for the corresponding links. Now, for the fourth video in our series, we are specifically looking at education and its impact on 311 requests. There are four hypotheses concerning education. The first hypothesis postulates that those with higher education that are greater than high school diploma or GED have more 311 requests. On the other hand, hypothesis 2 postulates that high school diploma and lower education have less 311 requests. Maybe people with the higher education are more inclined to focus on first world problems than compared with people who have lower education. Hypothesis 3 postulates that those with higher education than high school diploma or GED have their 311 requests handled more quickly. Conversely, hypothesis 4 postulates that those with high school diploma and GED or less education have 311 requests resolved much more slowly. It's possible that there is a bias against people with less education, which means that the city or local government would be less apt to help them out. With that said, I'm putting a disclaimer here that the hypotheses that I make in these videos aren't necessarily reflective of my personal views, and I'm just merely putting out hypotheses as it was requested. So let's switch gears and take a look at our tableau file. I apologize for the black screen. There we go. On this slide, we assess educational groups against each of the individual neighborhood councils or neighborhoods. Now, we see that educational groups are divided into 8 sections. The first section is those with less than a 9th grade education. Now, for the purposes of this presentation, I'm just going to say 9th grade, simply because it's just a lot easier to say, and it makes the presentation go more smoothly. So I'll be doing that going forward. For this one, Group 2, it's high school but with no diploma. Group 3 represents high school with a diploma, so they graduated high school. Group 4 represents the GED, people who took the GED and have received it. The GED exam, I'm sorry. And then Group 5 represents people who've taken some college but haven't received a formal higher educational degree. This group, Group 6, represents people who have received an associate's degree. Group 7 represents people who've received a bachelor's degree, while Group 8 represents people who receive higher education beyond just a bachelor's degree. So it could be people who received, I would say, a master's degree, a doctorate, things of that nature. Now, if you look at the bottom, you'll notice the x-axis. It represents this, or it signifies the portion of the population of that particular educational group. If you notice, bachelor's degree has the longest x-axis because it goes all the way to 20K. The second highest is both the 9th grade and the high school with diploma. They're about 15K. I think the 9th grade is slightly more than the high school diploma, but it's pretty close. And so while I can't say conclusively if that's the biggest, we can kind of assess that it is. And so if we look in our next graph, we'll try our best to kind of eyeball and see if that's true. So here we again, we're going to look if bachelor's degree, which is represented by the red bar, 9th grade, which represents by the blue bar, and high school with the diploma, which is represented by the purple bar, are consistently higher than compared to the other educational groups. And so going from left to right, on the first page, you can see that blue definitely has its peaks. So this one, that one, not necessarily all of it, but it is still relatively high in some neighborhoods. Red is also consistently pretty big, though not always. And then of course you have purple, which not everyone, but purple still has its moments as well. So we go to the next page here, and then again you see a lot of red spikes. So that, to me, it makes sense why the population went all the way to 20K. Blue is still there, has some spikes here and there. This one, in this neighborhood, it's the third highest. This one, and of course there's purple. Let me go here to the next page. So again, red has its spikes, but blue also has its spikes. So it's coming back. Same thing with the red, and then you have the purple. So I think that's pretty consistent. So we see red again, a lot of spikes. So again, that's why it's 20K, and we see a lot of purple spikes too. The brown one has some spikes, but I think that's probably only for this page. And then again, we see purple and red, some blues here, there. Again, the red spikes. Okay, here's the blues coming back, and purple's there too. Reds. Oh, here you got some yellows. But again, blue, which is the 9th grade, still has some of its spikes. Same thing with the purple. But I think we could pretty much agree that red goes pretty much across the board. Here we have a lot of purples again, which is the high school with diploma. Same with blues. So I think it's safe just by eyeballing it. We can see lots of reds, and here's a lot of purples, and here's some blues. So yeah, it makes sense. So I would, especially when you look at this chart right here, I would say that a large portion of the Los Angeles region, well, we can't say that conclusively, but just by looking through the graphs, yeah, there's definitely lots of bachelor's degree, and followed that by, I would say, probably the high school diploma, and then of course there's some the 9th grade blue bar is also pretty up there. So now, oops, wrong graph. Now we go to the regression analysis. So here we perform regression analysis on each individual educational group and the count or amount of 311 requests. I think it's important to highlight that when running the regression, both the bachelor's degree and the graduate degree had p-values greater than that 5% value. So unfortunately, the graphs for the bachelor and the graduate level, we can't use that to assess if there's correlation or not. So there could be a correlation, but there might also be not a correlation. So it's inconclusive. So unfortunately, we can't draw a conclusion based on these two graphs at the end. Another thing I think we should highlight is that the associates level, so at least it had a good p-value, its r-squared value, it's not too low, but it's still low. To me, it's low enough that it indicates a lack of correlation. So it's too low to indicate any correlation. So I doubt there's a correlation there simply because it's low. However, the good thing, and this is actually one of my better graphs, is that all other educationals that I haven't discussed do have a high enough r-squared value to indicate some correlation. In other words, 9th grade educational level, high school with a diploma, high school, even high school without a diploma, and GED, as well as some college, all have a correlation with its education, with its corresponding education level and the amount of 311 requests. So I think that's pretty interesting. And in fact, if we go based upon like the one which has the highest, that would be high school with no diploma had the highest r-squared value. And then I think that's followed up with less than 9th grade educational level. And then if we go back to our hypothesis, which let me do real quick. Hold on. Oops. There. Oh, sorry. There we go. If we go back to our hypothesis, hypothesis one, again, I would say it's relatively inconclusive, because again, the high p-value of both bachelor's degree and graduate level were the p-value was too high, and so we couldn't draw a conclusion based on that. In addition, if you remember the some college level, it had a moderate R-squared value, so like 30%, maybe not the best percentage, but that could indicate something. On the other hand, though, the associate's degree had a weak R-squared value. It was only 17%. So when you have one that's possibly not related, you have one that's not related and one that is related. So it's kind of hard to say if it's right or wrong. So that's why I would say that hypothesis one is inconclusive, and it doesn't help, of course, that bachelor's and graduate level was inconclusive. So that's that. That's statistics for you. Anyway, on the other hand, hypothesis 2 is completely incorrect, because as we can see, a lot of the high school educational level and below, whether it was with diploma, without diploma, GED, less than 9th grade, they all had strong R-squared value, indicating a good correlation. So that to me signifies that lower education actually do have a significant 311 request. So let's go back to the tableau and continue our analysis. In fact, I think we're going to do the analysis based on how quickly 311 requests are resolved. So here we ran the regression against educational groups and the 311 resolution speed. Unfortunately, when running the regression, most age groups had p-values that were higher than the acceptable threshold of 5%. Only 9th grade education and high school with no diploma had acceptable p-values. However, even though their p-values were acceptable, their R-squared values was still way too low to indicate any type of correlation. Now, as mentioned in the previous video, there is always a major outlier in these graphs, at least, which represents the downtown Los Angeles region. We can take away that outlier in the hopes that it will improve our p-value. And let's see. Sadly, the only neighborhood that had any improvement was the associate's degree. Here, it went from 60% to like 3%, which is quite a jump. I'm not sure what exactly happened, but I think I did it right. Yeah. Oh, I'm looking at the wrong. Yeah, so that's interesting. Hold on, I just want to double check. Yeah, that's a significant increase. So it went when you take away the outlier, the associate's p-value went from 60% to 3%, which is kind of astonishing, to be honest. But unfortunately, even though their p-value improved, the R-squared value was still relatively small, and so you can't really. So there is no correlation when it comes to associate's degree. All other ones that I haven't talked about, meaning high school with diploma, GED, some educational, bachelor's degree, and graduate's degree, they all are inconclusive simply because their p-values are way too high. So again, if we go back to the PowerPoint slides, do neighborhoods with education higher than high school diploma or GED have faster to 311 requests? Well, that's inconclusive, simply because they don't give the p-values too high. The only thing we can say for certain is that associates degree has no correlation. So at least for associate's degree, that one is that's the only one where we can say that it's not correlated through 311 request resolution. Hypothesis 4, I would say, is also inconclusive, simply because we only have less than ninth grade education and high school with no diploma, which also shows no correlation. So that this is also inconclusive. Thus, the only things that we can take away is, hey, high school with no diploma and ninth grade, they have no correlation with 311 request. On the other hand, associate's degree also has no correlation with 311 request resolution speed. So yeah. Okay, so that's the end of our educational demographic factor analysis. Thank you for viewing my presentation. Join me next time when we go over the language portion of our 311 request demographic analysis. Thank you.